This video is sponsored by Aura. These past 2 weeks I've been reviewing every single Simpsons Treehouse of Horror segment. I'm going to try to not make it seem too obvious that I scripted and recorded this as one massive video, but we're still only halfway and there's so many of these. Honestly, even if I gave myself a decade break from even thinking about The Simpsons, I think I'd still be pretty bored by this segment. It's just so pointless. The segment is called Untitled Robot Parody, by the way, which really just shows how much they were phoning it in. Couldn't even come up with a title. Basically, a bunch of cars and appliances randomly turn into robots and then they fight each other, with no real purpose. And maybe that's supposed to be a commentary on the Michael Bay films, but this episode came out after just the first Transformers film, which was before the series got really bad. I really can't express how boring this segment is. Like, everything about it feels played out. Bart looking for a gift for Lisa is like Clown Without Pity, the robot destroying the toys is like Grift and the Magi, the robots attacking humans feels like Life's a Glitch, and also a bit like the opener for this episode generally. And then the town being destroyed is something we've seen loads, as is the ending with humanity being enslaved, which we've seen in Citizen Kang. The big difference is that every single one of these aspects in the context of this segment is stripped of anything that would make it interesting. This is my new lowest ranking segment, and probably the first one I'd say I actively dislike. At best, it's average. Okay, good. Turns out I'm definitely not just getting bored of these and that's why I dislike the last one. How to Get Ahead in Dead-Vertising is a much better segment. In fact, while it pays homage to Mad Men with its focus on advertising, the premise seems mostly original. I haven't seen Mad Men, but I assume it's not about a guy who kills celebrities so that they can't object to companies using their image for marketing purposes. Homer killing the celebrities is pretty entertaining. I especially enjoy how gory Krusty's death is. Feels like it's been a while since we've had a really gory death in these segments. The rest of the deaths are also entertaining. Then the moment where all the celebrities come down from heaven to kill Homer is pretty good, with how The Simpsons calls itself out for some of their characters clearly being homages to old celebrities. And the final reveal that Homer in dying is able to get to heaven and lock all the ghosts out is a nice ending, especially with the revelation that Abe Lincoln is secretly gay. I mean, we're still not especially close to even the median quality of the classic era, but this is a reminder that these segments can be enjoyable. Still, standard disclaimer, I find most of these episodes enjoyable, so this is still going to be a pretty low ranking below the Genesis tub, but above Night of the Dolphin. So before I review It's the Grand Pumpkin Milhouse, I should just say that I've not seen the Peanuts special this is parodying. Honestly, Peanuts isn't that big of a thing in the UK, and I didn't watch anything Peanuts related until last year at Christmas when I watched the Christmas special, with Christmas feeling like a holiday that better syncs up tonally with Peanuts. Weirdly, I had a Snoopy toy as a kid and knew about Snoopy, but didn't know what he was from. There was like a decade of time where I knew about Snoopy, but had never heard of Charlie Brown. Anyway, all this is to say I don't derive any childlike sense of nostalgia from the presentation of the segment, but I do think it's animated in a cute way, which I appreciate. I also think it's funny how immediately they turn these newly sentient creatures against humanity by revealing our enthusiasm for eating them. I must admit I don't really find the trombone joke that funny. It just seems a bit obvious to me. That's how adults talk in the show, but Marge is actually just playing the trombone. Haha. That's a negative note to end on. For me, the main positives here are the unique tone complemented by the animation style, but I don't find the episode hilarious or scary or exciting. And with that said, I'll rank it above Send in the Clones, but below Stop the World. Would it be inconsistent of me if, after largely praising the previous segment for its unique style, I then said that Dial M for Murder or Press Hash to return to main menu suffered from being too direct a parody of its source material? I just feel like this is less Simpsons' version of a Hitchcock film and more The Simpsons trying to be a Hitchcock film. In general, one of my issues with the later seasons is they get more overt with their references, and this in my view is an example of that. The plot itself is fine, I guess, the humour is also alright, but for me it feels like most of the substance of this segment gets lost in the presentation. It almost feels like anything could have happened in this segment because the point was less what happened and more that it fit with this noir style. So I'm going to rank this quite low, probably above Reaper Madness but below In the Belly of the Boss. I was really looking forward to rewatching Don't Have a Cow, Mankind, because 28 Days Later is one of my favourite horror movies and this episode really captures that tone. Indeed, While this isn't super scary, it's the scariest segment in a while, and pretty gory too. That cold open leading up to the title reveal works really well. Comparing this to the first zombie segment back in season 4, I actually mostly have positive things to say. This captures the reality of a zombie apocalypse and how scary it would be to see your friends and neighbours turn into rabid monsters. It's also a reasonably funny episode, not quite laugh out loud, but better than a lot of the recent segments. The ending feels a little out of place considering how well the rest of the segment does at feeling dark. Perhaps I'm being generous, but I'm going to rank this above Bart Simpson's Dracula, which by extension ranks this above Dial Z for Zombies, which makes sense. I do prefer this segment as a Simpsons take on zombies. Of course, one of the scariest things that ever happened to Homer Simpson was when he got his identity stolen.
There's something really different about you, Dad.
I am a new tie wearing.
Oh yeah.
And while you probably don't have to worry about zombies and vampires this Halloween, you do need to worry about your identity all year. And this is where our sponsor Aura can help. Indeed, recently over 2.9 billion records were stolen from national public data, compromising people's full name, address, date of birth, phone number, and most importantly, social security number. So how does Aura protect you? Well, Aura monitors your personal data across billions of data points like the dark web and public court records to detect and alert you to potential identity theft, and they provide you with up to $5 million in identity theft insurance to protect against the worst case scenario, and they also offer a VPN service to make your online browsing itself safer. And if you browse their website, you'll see many other features they provide. If you're still thinking, well, that's a lot of benefits, but I also want to help support this channel, then you can do that when you go to aura.com/KC Reviews to get a 14-day free trial, which is, by the way, enough time for Aura to complete their check to see if any of your data is exposed, making that aspect effectively a free service. So there's literally no reason not to click on the link and sign up for a free trial. And considering how serious data leaks can be sure to take advantage of all Aura's other great services. If you don't want to be at risk for one moment longer, make sure to go to aura.com/KC Reviews to try 2 weeks free. So my opinion on There's No Business Like Mo Business may be coloured by the fact I don't really like when The Simpsons does musicals. I'm not against musicals in general, but well, I guess the big issue is that almost every Simpsons character's singing voice sounds terrible. I do like the odd song, for example the Homer Simpson gay song is actually pretty fun.
Cause frankly dear, to not be queer just makes me wanna puke.
I guess my main beef with the singing is that with such a short runtime for these segments, it means there's less opportunity for plot. This is literally just about Homer falling onto some pipes and Moe covering it up as he tries to seduce Marge. With that said, I do find the idea of Homer slowly being drained of blood over the course of days as he's impaled on these pipes to be really disturbing. Dying slowly like that as an ugly man cucks you is horrifying. Something I like about Sweeney Todd, which this is, I guess, parodying, is that contrast in being really unpleasantly gruesome but also a musical when musicals are generally a bit more upbeat, and this segment has that too. In terms of ranking it though, there are aspects I don't like, so I'm going to place it above 4 Beheadings and a Funeral, but below The Island of Dr. Hibbert. War and Pieces has a quite fun premise, parodying Jumanji but you have to play a whole load of different board games to win. Honestly, this would be a pretty good premise for an actual movie, or a board game night, except for the part where you play Monopoly for 5 hours. And this segment doesn't even have time to explore even a small fraction of board games. Thinking back on it having just watched it, it feels like it flew by. They have a few quick jokes about other people experiencing board games, then Milhouse dies while playing Scrabble, and they end by making fun of Mousetrap for being super boring. Personally, I've never played it. Oh, they play Battleship, which was actually the best bit, but none of this was super funny nor particularly scary, so I'm going to have to rank it pretty low. In fact, just below Married to the Blob. This segment really doesn't have much going for it in execution. After this we have Master and Cadaver, or as Homer says it should be called, Recipe for Murder.
They should call this one Recipe for Murder.
What do you mean this one?
I sort of like that this one actually has a complete plot. It's not very funny, with one actively unfunny joke they repeat several times, and it's not scary, but the presence of a genuine story is refreshing. I remember actually being invested in whether this guy was a murderer or not, and they do a pretty good job telling a complete story in such a short amount of time. Although Homer's sudden need to kill every single person to avoid witnesses is a bit dumb, but then the reveal that the whole scene is being imagined by Maggie during bath time is cute. The main point in favour of this segment is that it has an actual plot where stuff happens. That alone places it above quite a few other segments. I'd say it ranks just below How to Get Ahead in Dead-Vertising. I feel like Tweenlight shows what can go wrong if you try too hard to be a direct parody of something. The Harry Potter parody is much better because The Simpsons allowed themselves to make it their own rather than feeling the need to make a big deal out of perfectly imitating Harry Potter. Here, you end up with this weird halfway thing where, well, firstly, Daniel Radcliffe plays Edward Cullen, which is very confusing, but secondly, you have the Lisa-Edward romance, which is a very slimmed-down version of Twilight that doesn't even make fun of the obvious things to make fun of, like how creepy Edward is, and then you have Homer making friends with Edward's dad, which has nothing to do with the original movie. So when you put this together, you get a segment that isn't enough of its own thing to be impressive, and doesn't lean into Twilight enough to be an effective parody. Also, Twilight itself is a pretty boring movie series, so there isn't even that much to parody anyway. Overall, I'm not into this segment at all, and I'm inclined to put it in the second to last place below You Got to Know When to Gollum, but still above Untitled Robot Parody. Before I review the first segment of special number 22, wow, I've done 22 of these. I do want to quickly talk about the opening segment, because it's 2.5 minutes long, which is pretty substantial. It's fine overall, but they reuse the same theme from the Dial M for Murder segment 2 episodes prior, which feels repetitive. Anyway, let's talk about the diving bell and the Butterball. It's about Homer getting paralyzed and only being able to express himself by farting. It's not funny, and it's not scary. It's very stupid. You could say it's so stupid that it circles back round to being brilliant. You could say that. I'm not going to. I'm going to rank it last place. Actually, it's still better than the Transformers episode. Indeed, I wouldn't be surprised if this episode is similar to how they wrote the script for the Transformers episode. Dial D for Diddley is refreshing. It's not fantastic, but there's parts about it I enjoy. I think Ned works well as a murdering Avenger who takes things too far. You always get the impression he's just on the verge of going crazy, that is, when he's not in the process of going crazy already. And the montage of him killing people is pretty entertaining, especially with the fake outs at the start. Homer being the one telling him what to do doesn't make much sense, because why would Homer tell him to kill criminals? Still, I don't need these episodes to make too much sense. The ending is actually quite funny. I enjoy the way Ned just slowly gets more and more irritated. Firstly, he finds out Homer's been manipulating him, then he gets framed by God, then he finds out his wife is banging Satan. But sometimes there's a fine line between tragedy and comedy, and I find Ned's frustration quite funny. With that said, I think I'll say this episode is better than Mr. and Mrs. Simpson. Now we're past the halfway point, these rankings are going to get less and less committed. I'm deciding where these episodes rank on a continuum that I wasn't 100% sure on when I laid it out in the first place, so maybe take the exact placement with a grain of salt from here on out. Something I like about In the Na'vi is that Avatar is pretty crap, and I actually get in some pretty good criticisms in making fun of it. Honestly, Avatar would have been much better if the planet was filled with loads of creatures to fight the humans like we see in the segment. Also, I enjoy seeing Chalmers in a prominent role, and the way he gets defeated in a quick but satisfying way to wrap up the main plot. My only real issue would be that the woman Bart gets with has a super annoying voice. Oh, also, this isn't very Halloween-y, which I don't love. Avatar isn't a horror film. What I do like is that Bart's alien love interest has the exact same name as the 100% guaranteed next president of the United States.
I am called Kamala!
Genuinely, suddenly hearing her say that name was one of the most interesting things to happen in these specials for a while. Insanely serendipitous that I would happen to be making this series now when she's running for president, and I think we can all agree it's a clear sign that she's going to win. We haven't had any Donalds in these segments. Overall, I enjoy this segment as a parody. The fact it uses the Rigelians is a good example of how they weren't so committed to being faithful to the source material that they compromised on still being The Simpsons, which I appreciate. Still, I'll rank it below The Island of Dr. Hibbert and above There's No Business Like Mo Business. The opening segments for these start getting longer, but I'm still not going to be ranking them. What I will talk about though is the greatest story ever told, which is in fact not the greatest story, but it is pretty decent. I guess it's supposed to be an analogy for environmental issues. There's this dangerous natural phenomenon that people keep making worse for short-term gain until eventually it reaches a point where they can't control it and it destroys everything. In fact, it's kind of weird they haven't done a Day After Tomorrow parody considering Lisa is an environmentalist. Still, assuming I'm reading the theme incorrectly, I do think that makes this segment slightly interesting. It isn't super funny or scary, but as an allegory it's kind of fun. The final revelation that they're going to a separate dimension filled with all their trash works. So based on all those positives, I'm going to still rank this below How to Get Ahead in Dead-Vertising, but above Master and Cadaver. Unnormal Activity has a lot to enjoy. Firstly, it parodies Paranormal Activity in a way I like, just takes the found footage format and then lets Simpsons shenanigans play out. It's kind of boring in that nothing scary really happens, but that's just like the original film anyway. For me, while it's crass, I enjoy the sexual joke at the end. First of all, the idea that Homer's going to be spit roasted in a demon three-way, and then the closing joke that Homer does something off camera that causes both demons to immediately shout their safe word. That actually made me laugh. Still, the sense that nothing's really happening hangs over this episode, not dissimilar to a dark presence in a haunted house. So I'll actually rank it below Reaper Madness. Remember back when that was the lowest ranking episode? Those were the days. Now that's a pretty decent ranking. Bart and Homer's excellent adventure is what happens when you've already made an episode called Bart to the Future, because this is actually a parody of Back to the Future, and to be fair, it's a good one. It's not exactly high concept the way he goes back to the past, but it feels like kind of a big deal to go back to when Homer and Marge first met, and then Bart finding out that Homer and Marge not getting together makes his life better is quite a twist on the original. The conclusion that Marge is inexorably in love with Homer because of how pathetic he is depressing, but I do love this joke.
Even you, caveman Homer?
That's Renaissance Homer.
It's the first time in a while that I've involuntarily laughed out loud at one of these segments. Overall, this segment felt kind of long, but in a way I appreciated. When I realised Bart was heading back into the future, I was worried there wouldn't be much time left to explore it, and was pleasantly surprised that there was still a good few minutes left. I'm going to say that I preferred this to the Grand Pumpkin Milhouse. Hey, it's the episode with the Guillermo del Toro intro. Anyway, All the Places You'll Go is a nice Dr. Seuss parody, the different animation style is appreciated, and I don't think the segment got caught up in being a parody and still had time to actually feel like a worthwhile segment in itself. Obviously, it's just Homer as the Cat in a Hat committing lots of crimes. I do like the weird moment where it suggested he's some kind of violent political extremist. It has a nice contrast with the general silliness of the segment. Also, the rhyming was impressive, kind of cheating when you can just make up words, but I guess my beef there is with the Doctor himself. Anyway, below Night of the Dolphin and above Survival of the Fattest. So, somebody said, what if we took the very ending of If Only I Had a Brain and just did that again? Dead and Shoulders is literally just about Bart losing his head and being attached to Lisa, even though it makes no sense because in this segment his body isn't crushed and destroyed, so why couldn't they use his own body? Anyway, the episode just deals with how annoying it would be to be attached to someone else's body. Then Bart discovers when Lisa is asleep he's in charge and immediately tries to detach Lisa's head so he can be in charge of her body, which is quite underdeveloped considering that before that point they'd been getting closer, and then we just end with them both losing their heads and getting attached to other people. It's all pretty pointless, so I'll rank it as being just below War and Pieces. Freaks No Geeks is a segment that in my mind stands out for having such a substantial plot. I haven't seen the original movie it's based on, but from a brief read of the synopsis I guess it's mostly copying that plot, but it's pretty entertaining. Considering the limited runtime, a plot needs to be really good for me to offer much praise, especially if the episode isn't that scary or funny. On the one hand, I like the scene where Smithers places a hat on Mr. Burns' head and his legs buckle. On the other hand, they do literally steal the joke from Futurama in this episode. This segment is one where while you're watching it, it's entertaining because stuff is always happening, but afterwards it's hard to think of anything that really stuck with me from it. With that said, I'll rank this above Reaper Madness, but below Dial M for Murder. The 25th Treehouse of Horror special starts off with School is Hell. This segment feels kind of long, but in a good way, because so much was happening and being developed that I was assuming we must be at the end, but then there was still more to come. The idea of hell just being a more hellish version of regular society is cool, a bit like in Beetlejuice how the afterlife has all sorts of different jobs for people. The idea that Bart actually flourishes in hell makes a lot of sense. I mean, not theologically obviously, this is all nonsense, but in cartoon logic it makes sense. Also, it's kind of hot that his succubus teacher is coming onto him. Pretty sure that's every boy's fantasy. Overall, this feels almost like they were trying to fit a character story of a whole regular 20-minute episode into just this 1/3 of an episode segment. Bart is struggling at school, and then he goes to a strange school in a new environment, but starts doing really well. There's not really much of an ending, but that's what happens when you're strapped for time. I think this is better than in the Na'vi, but worse than the island of Dr. Hibbert. So A Clockwork Yellow will first of all have you thinking, wait a minute, this feels like a very direct parody of A Clockwork Orange, but also seems weirdly unnecessarily different, but then by the end you'll be like, oh wait, they're just parodying every Stanley Kubrick film, which is good because I've seen every Stanley Kubrick film. I mean, the segment isn't good, but at least I know what it's on about. The big issue is that it is, as these things sometimes are, too overt with the reference humour, such that there's nothing there if you didn't know the references. The final scene is just the segment completely abandoning trying to be scary or funny or even wrapping up the plot in favour of filling it with references. The only thing I really like is their funny accents. Golly, I'd hate to be from a place where people talk so stupidly. Anyway, I'll rank it above Married to the Blob, but below Heck House, because it's worse. Fun fact, I think from here on out I haven't actually watched any of these before. So yeah, from now on, if I talk about these segments as if I'm watching them for the first time, it's because I'm watching them for the first time. The Others is a fun premise. Basically, the Tracy Ullman shorts characters are ghosts who come back to haunt The Simpsons. They do make a few jokes about how much the show has changed, but the main focus is on the idea that Homer is attracted to the younger version of Marge for some reason. After this, Marge decides that Homer likes ghosts, so she kills herself, then everyone kills themselves. The ending is actually pretty silly. And in the end, I'm torn. On the one hand, I really like this premise. On the other hand, I feel like surely they could have done more with it than this. Also, considering how much I preferred the earlier segments, I don't want to be reminded of them. It hurts too much. I could rate this a lot lower for failing to deliver on the premise as much as I'd like, but based on the premise alone, I'm going to rate this above The Grand Pumpkin, but below Bart and Homer's excellent adventure. Wanted, Dead, Then Alive is a story where Bob finally kills Bart, but then has no motivation for life now he's dead, so he brings Bart back. This idea of what would happen if a rivalry like this ended with the villain finally winning is quite a well-worn trope, and indeed the solution of Bob reanimating Bart and then killing him multiple times is something we've already seen in an Itchy and Scratchy episode before, so the whole thing is undeniably derivative. I did enjoy the joke when even after his focus has been almost entirely on Bart, Homer still says,
"That's for trying to frame Krusty!"
And Bart's ultimate revenge of reanimating Bob as a freak is a nice way to wrap things up. The fact this is so played out as a premise might seem pretty bad, but in some sense I feel like it's about time they did this. I'm surprised they didn't do this episode earlier, so there's something satisfying about finally having a Sideshow Bob-centered Halloween segment where he can actually be allowed to kill Bart. In terms of ranking then, I won't be too harsh on this, but it's below the Ned Zone and above Ghost Dad. Well, Homerzilla is interesting. Not necessarily in a good way. It starts off as a very standard, by-the-numbers Godzilla parody. It's nothing like as funny as King Homer, which I didn't even rank that high, so that's not a favourable comparison. Maybe based on this, they chose to add a twist by suddenly revealing this to be a movie that some studio executives are watching as they decide to reboot Godzilla, at which point the whole segment becomes a commentary on unnecessary sequels. I'm a big enough fan of the Godzilla movies that I've at least seen every single one widely considered to be good, and all of the modern ones. I kind of feel like they could have made a joke about crossovers here by having King Homer fight Homerzilla, and then maybe they could have made a meta joke about the fact that The Simpsons itself has gone on too long and is trying to recapture the glory days. Either way, it's an interesting direction to take a segment, but despite that, I was sort of just bored. I am truly getting so bored of sitting through these segments completely stone-faced, because very few of them have even a tenth as many funny moments as the classic era. So with that said, I guess I'll rank this above Dial M for Murder, but below In the Belly of the Boss. Telepaths of Glory is about Milhouse going mad with power, and the whole time I was thinking, wait a minute, where's that one segment where Milhouse invents a magic glove that allows him to get the upper hand on bullies? But then he ends up abusing that power.
Girls like you better.
Turns out it's from a non-Halloween anthology segment. The big difference between that one and this one is that here, there's no real sense of Milhouse having a character. They get powers, then he uses them for some kind of over-the-top projects, and then he gets dunked on by Maggie. The only thing I really liked was the joke at the end about Kang and Kodos being put into 4:3 ratio.
Just because it looks like Season 4 doesn't make it Season 4.
Although I didn't use the 4:3 versions of the episodes when I was covering the classic era. Sorry. Honestly, this episode really bothers me because it doesn't have a plot. When they first get the powers, Bart doesn't have any, so I thought maybe he'd become a villain out of jealousy. But no. I really want to put this in the bottom slot, especially since the bottom of the leaderboard is much more exciting than the top right now. It's hard to envision any new entries to the top 10 based on the current state of these segments, whereas there may still be some new worst episode ever. Unfortunately, this one isn't quite as bad as Untitled Robot Parody, so it has to be in the second from bottom spot. We're in the home stretch, I mean, if you ignore the whole other video to be released after this one. But right now, we'll just focus on Dry Hard. Dry Hard is a parody of the Hunger Games, but instead of a famine, there's a drought, so that way they can also parody Mad Max. The Hunger Games is pretty dumb, so I can get behind their decision to parody it. It's also an entertaining enough concept to put these kids in a battle royale scenario. Unfortunately, they really tried to do too much. It's another example, in my view, of them going too far with the parody aspect at the expense of making the segment good. Rather than entirely focusing on the Hunger Games themselves, they make fun of the way the story is divided into several parts, which necessitates each individual part being very short, and the final twist is that they end up destroying the planet by blowing up a dam to a reservoir. It's not really that funny. I guess that's slightly better than Tweenlight, but the real lesson here is don't make parodies of young adult novel series. For me, Bff R.I.P. is an example of why The Simpsons should stop trying to parody things so directly. It worked with The Shining, but it's just so easy to get lazy with, whereas if you come up with original stories for a segment, you actually have to put in the work. This story is still pretty basic. Lisa has an imaginary friend who is now killing Lisa's real friends. The murders themselves are kind of entertaining, as is the effort to save Marge and Homer's life, but there's nothing super funny or super scary about it. It is mostly better than their recent parodies though. It's also better than E.T. Go Home, but worse than Unnormal Activity. Forgive me for wrapping up quickly with that last segment, but I'm just excited to be at the end. Moefinger is an enjoyable parody of Kingsman. I like the way it's about a bar instead of a tailor, but more than that, I like how the moments they choose to parody make for an overall entertaining scene anyway. The two big fight scenes are great. Also, this segment got the first laugh from me in so long, when Moe says he's going to introduce Bart to Q, and then it turns out it's just a pool cue, and that's his weapon. That's brilliant. The aspects of this that are a parody of James Bond feel like they're there because they had some other jokes they felt they could make, so they included them, which is how it should be, rather than just including them for the sake of being references like the Mad Max parody in Die Hard. So for the final segment of this video, I'm going to say it's better than the others, but not as good as Bart and Homer's Excellent Adventure. Anyway, looks like I'll be uploading a day earlier than usual for my video next week since Halloween is on Thursday, and obviously, wait a minute. Turns out that the Simpsons Halloween special isn't airing until November, after Halloween. They do this quite often and it makes no sense to me. People will get into a certain holiday a little bit in advance, so I'd think you'd want to upload your Halloween episode before Halloween instead of after it. Also, even if people were obsessive about only doing Halloween stuff on the hallowed evening itself, they could record the Halloween special and wait a few days. Showing it after Halloween robs them of that option. On November 1st, I'm already celebrating Reformation Day, then Guy Fawkes Night, and then Remembrance Day, all within the first fortnight after Halloween, but it looks like we'll have to wait until after Halloween before we finish this series. That doesn't make much sense to me, but don't blame me, blame The Simpsons. I realize I could just release it on Halloween with the videos I have, but that would ruin the perfect 9 episodes per video distribution I've got going. I'm sure you understand. See you sometime in early November. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and click the video on your screen now. Hopefully it will be part 4 sometime between now and Christmas.